Hi, my name's Daly. I'm a Professor of Economics here at the University of Canberra, and it's almost 40 years since I did my undergraduate degree in economics, and I still find it a really fascinating subject. There's lots of interesting stuff and lots of interesting applications for economics. I guess it can be applied to sort of general big picture stories like what the global financial crisis, how we might manage that. Also, economic analysis is applied to right down to marriage and children and family. So there's a whole range of things, and it can also be just used in people's daily lives. So I think that economics provides a framework for looking at a whole range of questions. And the number of people who are actually employed as professional economists is going to be much smaller than the number of people who have an economics degree or have some sort of economic background. You'll find economists among business people, public servants, academics, managers, all sorts of occupations. And many of the disciplines that are taught in business schools have got, as part of their basis, economics. So marketing is an example, international business is another one, accounting uses the basic economic national accounts framework. So all of these things have got underlying them an important economics component. I've spent most of my working life in economic research or in academia teaching. So that's my particular area of expertise, but I've also done some consulting work. So I've seen what it looks like in some of the big public service departments, for example, but also in private industry. I've done consulting work for some of the big banks and people like that. So I would like to just run through some of the key concepts, of economic thought, but very quickly, of course, because I think these sorts of values are things that permeate the way economists think about the world. And they're also going to be used in lots of applications. So I guess the first one is the idea of opportunity cost, the idea that there's always something else you could be doing. Instead of watching this video, you could be off having a swim or having a drink with your friends or whatever. There is an opportunity cost in everything you do. And secondly is the idea of utility. And utility is really talking about people's satisfaction. It's broader than the idea of a monetary benefit. It includes all non-monetary benefit as well. So I might receive benefit from doing someone else a favour, which isn't a financial benefit, but still I make the calculation that this is something that's worthwhile doing. People respond to incentives. So people like to do things that make them feel better. So if there's an opportunity to make yourself better off, people are more likely to do that than something that might be for the greater good or have maybe long-term benefits, but in the short term you can still see that this would be this outcome is the thing for you at the moment. It might not be in your long-term interest, and you prefer benefits in the short run to the long run. So because people are utility maximisers by assumption, they do things to make themselves better off, they will respond to incentives, and they're in the best position to decide what they want. So I might think it's good for you to give up smoking. But if you personally derive a lot of pleasure from smoking, you might decide in the short run you want to smoke. There might be longer run implications, but in the short run you will make that decision. So people can choose these things. In a lot of the policy analysis in economics, we've got the idea of the gainers being able to compensate the losers for any change in policy. And I'm going to use an example a bit later about that, but if you think of something like what's happening in the car industry in Australia at the moment. There are people who are going to lose when the car industry closes, and there are people that are going to gain when it closes. And we've got to see whether the gainers can compensate the losers, whether this is a worthwhile thing to be doing. Another thing that economists are very gung-ho about is the idea of markets, that markets are much better at allocating goods and services than in a command economy. Here, think of the example of the old USSR, now 20 years since it's existed, where there was a central planner who decided how many pairs of jeans, how many lumps of steel, how many bits of military equipment were produced, and that's what happened. And so there was a huge black market because consumers still wanted Levi jeans and cool boots and things like that, but that wasn't what the USSR central planner was producing. What economists like is for the market to be operating and to be sending out price signals that encourage producers to produce more of the goods where the prices are going up and less of the goods where the prices are going down. So this preference for markets is a very strongly held preference of many economists. I am personally perhaps not such a market person as some of my colleagues or some economists, but I can still see there are huge benefits in the market. It's a very easy way, cheap way of allocating resources. But markets don't always lead to the best social optimal outcomes. And there's lots of examples of where governments intervene in the market in order to try and produce what is a socially preferred system. So one example of that in Australia would be the provision of universal healthcare. You could have a system where, just like in buying a car, we don't provide everyone with a nice car, but we do provide everyone with the basic health services that they require. That was a political decision that was made 30 years ago, plus that we were going to have a universal health system. And we then have the economist's problem is, well, what is the most efficient way of satisfying that democratically recorded wish to have a universal healthcare system? There's also progressive income tax is another example of where society has said, well, we want to redistribute income from the very rich to the not so rich, so we're going to tax the wealthier more heavily than we tax the people on low incomes. That's an example of where the government intervenes in the market system to produce what we think is going to be a socially preferred outcome. Environmental regulations are another example. So you can't just go out as a professional fisher person in the barrier reef and catch as many fish as you want to. There are very strict licensing requirements for anybody who wants to fish in that area. So there we have an intervention in the market where we're trying to make the market produce socially better outcomes.